So let's get into today's session and get really into presenting what we're talking about today. So today I'm going to be joined by two colleagues from the College of Policing and Mike from the Police Digital Service as we take time to share details of a fantastic event we co-hosted right at the beginning of this month, and it's great we've been able to come back within the same month. For some time, the Police Digital Service and the College of Policing have been working together on behalf of you, UK Policing, to look at ways we can help forces in modernising the learning environment within our police forces. And it's very clear that the way we deliver training and learning and the opportunities have significantly changed. But it's also important that we recognise the needs and expectations of our workforce have changed. We all know what a young workforce and young in service workforce we've got, and their expectations of modern training and development opportunities have changed. I have to say that the engagement and networking at the event was absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure we'll cover some of the feedback a little bit later on with Mike. So let's get straight into the session, and Mark is just joining us, so we'll just let him in and he can get straight into the questions. So Mark, who was involved in the event and why did it take place?
Hi, thank you very much. Welcome everyone. Apologies I'm slightly late. Yeah, the event was really well attended. We had representatives from heads of L&D, business change, IT, and some comms as well, I think. In terms of attendees, we had 38 organisations attending, so that's pretty much every force, plus NPCC and Home Office representatives, a total of 140 attendees. You're seeing in front of you there the purpose of the event. I won't go through that in detail, but very much about building a network around modernising learning, something that we all felt, certainly at the exec L&D group and colleagues with PDS as well, felt that was a real gap. And there's a real opportunity for us to look at modernising learning together, and to connect one another, but also to learn from one another, and also to build that rapport again, I think. But we'll go into more detail later about the case studies. But yeah, really well attended event, David.
And just, it was a packed room, and perhaps some facts and figures, and importantly, who was talking, because it wasn't just police talking to police.
No, absolutely, and we were really keen on getting some really quality industry speakers in there, and I think there's more on that later on in the presentation. But yeah, as I say, obviously huge police presence in terms of attendees, but in terms of speakers from industry, we had in total 14 speakers, so we'll focus on forces shortly. But in terms of industry, these were the key topics we looked at. So trends in technology across learning, the importance of AI, the big topic on everyone's minds at the moment, and obviously is how technology is shaping how we work and learn. So you can see there we had a huge amount of experience, 15 to 20 years experience, from David from CIPD. We had the head of innovation from BT, Nicola Millard, hugely inspiring about the workspace and your working environment. We had Donald Clark, who hopefully many of you are aware of. Donald's been around many years, and delivers a very novel view on learning and his approach to it. Quite a disruptive and a challenging piece by Donald, but it was exactly what we wanted, because we felt it was an opportunity at the event for everyone to kind of take a bit of stock and realise what's going on out there in the world. And we also had contributions from Microsoft as well, really valuable, because we're all wedded to Microsoft, as you know. And finally, and not least, we had a brilliant anchor and facilitator from BBC, a journalist who's been with BBC for many years on the tech side. So real lot of experience in there, really bringing industry into policing. David, thank you.
Thanks. And I'm going to go to Anne next. And what we find when we're doing our events in PDS is storytelling is really important, and allowing and enabling forces to share their knowledge and experience with others. And it was one of my favourite sections of the day was the case studies. What was actually covered in those case studies?
Yeah, we were really blessed with the speakers that came along to present. There were some fabulous case studies, and it really, I think, helped to bring things to life for people in terms of the art of the possible and what's already happening out there. So we had Simon Thornycroft came from Dorset Police, and he was talking about use of extended reality and the use of SharePoint, and how technology can really improve the approach to delivery and evaluation of training interventions. And that whole evaluation piece is something at the college we're obviously, really, really keen and interested in. And then we had Peter Ward and colleagues came along from East Midlands and Leicestershire talking about their digital academy. And just how they've used many of the tools within MS365 to build this whole online, digital academy, which is working spectacularly well for them. And I know many people were excited to sort of see that and very interested to take those conversations forward with Peter and with Microsoft. And they talked about I hate to say the journey word, but the 3 years from inception to implementation where they are now, the lessons learned. And it's really important, I think, that our speakers didn't hold back on where the challenges had been also and how they'd overcome those. That's really helpful to talk about that, as well as how well it's gone, which it clearly has for them, and then onto their future development plans for the academy. And then finally, we had Lisa Burke and Ruth Buckley from Met Forensic Services, who talked about how they are using VR within forensic services. So yeah, some really excellent case studies.
And I think, we also had on the first day the 360 immersive lab, which was on site from BT, which gave everybody an opportunity to visit and experience the 360 environment and how to work in that. I know there's a huge audience. We've got a really good audience. If you did attend, please pop some comments or questions into the Q&A, and we'll put them to Mark, Anne and Mike in a few moments. Now, as organisers of an event, you can only really gauge if you succeeded in what you set out to, and if you can get the feedback from the delegates and the support. Mike, you've been carefully looking at the information that came out of the session, not only just the Slido responses and the questions there, but the feedback as well. What does the feedback actually tell us?
Thanks, David. The feedback was phenomenal. I think far better than I think all of us anticipated, and bearing in mind that the feedback we received came from not only the L&D community, but as Mark said, we had the business change, technology and comms communities there as well. I think everyone saw the opportunities that this event brought in raising that awareness around how we can really take this conversation further, not just from an L&D point of view, but also from a force-wide and a deployment of technology within. And as you can see from the slide, the feedback has been absolutely fantastic. Pretty much 100% satisfaction rate. The fact that forces were going to be taking things back from those 2 days to actually implement or think about implementing now has really given us that opportunity to start thinking, right, we've got some momentum. And looking at the questionnaire that's come back, or the people have completed the questionnaire around how they want to take this forward, we're looking at areas like AI. We're looking at areas around collaboration. So how can we collaborate better? Also, that how can we bring other areas into this conversation? So the likes of the information management and cybersecurity folk within forces. So we can look at the opportunities that this new technology and these new ways of working can bring, but in a compliant and a governed way. So lots of very, very strong positives that have come out of it, which will then feed into the activity that we're going to be taking forward over the next 12 months, which I think Mark is going to be talking about in a moment.
And that's exactly where I'm going next. So Mark, really important question. So what next? Question, what are the college and PDS going to be doing together to help forces? Because it's not policing us doing it to forces. This is very much about a partnership approach, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And a key outcome for us in the college was really, as I touched on earlier, really was building that user community feel again. For those that remember, we used to have a senior user group a number of years ago now, which was very successful and I think, you know, well received by many. You know, wasn't without its challenges. It was in the early years of e-learning, actually, so going back quite a while. But there were lots of challenges at that point, and there remain challenges now, but I think we're stronger together. Without sounding too hackneyed, and to take this forward, you know, in terms of networking, it says there knowledge sharing, how we develop our people within our teams to adjust to the new technologies and the new processes and so on, and also working together to really understand the benefits and realise those benefits together. It's gonna, if you could go to the next slide, David, that would be helpful, because what we're dealing with here is a lot of people. We had a huge, you know, grateful for the huge amount of people that attended, but we do need to establish some, it wouldn't be the policing without saying this, without some governance around this to be able to sort of move it forward effectively. So we have a meeting coming up with the L&D executive to sort of look at how we can best, you know, take all the good positive energy here and move it forward. So we're planning on, I think, having probably quite a small core group at one level, but most importantly having that user community network and potentially subgroups. And I've very broadly divided those. It may spin out another way, but very broadly split them out into people, processes and technology. So within that network, I think they're the three key areas for us, and there may be separate subgroups that split out, but we'll be looking for volunteers to sort of lead in these areas. I won't go through all of the detail there, but you can see under people, we've done a lot of work within the college, within my team, around aligning with the DDAT government skills capability framework, which has been really successful for us in terms of identifying job profiles for our team. We have a professional community within the college now around DDAT, and the learning skills within there are a huge part of that. It's allowed us to develop and articulate career pathways to our teams. It's allowed us to improve how we attract and recruit and retain people. We're also exploring secondments with policing, which we haven't done before, into our team. So if there's interest, really keen to talk about that. And also internships and apprenticeships, which I know forces like Leicestershire have made good inroads on. In terms of process, I think there's a lot in terms of a subgroup we can look at here, all ranging all the way from procurement to security and everything in between, really. You know, learning design, designing for different technologies, in terms of implementation, evaluation, all of those good things. But there's real sort of seismic shift now with processes, particularly with AI, which brings me on to the technology sort of work stream, if you like. So this, I envisage looking at research and development into new technology, but equally addressing what's the here and now. So that's AI, robotic process automation. We're starting to use that a lot in the college to simplify, you know, the more mundane tasks, so that we're freeing up specialist people to use their skills in areas where we need them. The whole VR experience that Anne touched on earlier is really starting to move in policing now, and I think, you know, there's a lot as the college we can do centrally to support that. Data management, those of you know our chief exec is a very data-driven individual. Andy Marsh was in his previous roles as chief constable, was very data-driven in the work he did, and he's bringing that into the college. So it's something where we're working on internally, as well as getting the most out of what we've got already, of course. We've all got Microsoft 365. You know, how are we getting the best out of that? How can we share positive work in that area? And also we're talking to Microsoft around the opportunities that Viva Learn offers us in terms of that personalized, user-driven access into multiple learning management systems, including the college's own one. And again, Copilot, which for those that don't know is the AI tool of choice for Microsoft, and they've now reduced the number of licenses that you can procure, so that's far more accessible to a lot of us, and we're experimenting with that as well in the college at the moment. So we have, those that know, we have been doing some upskilling workshops as well. So we plan to do more of those. Realistically, it's probably going to be regionally, just because of the capacity we've got within our team. More than happy to talk to all regions around what areas you'd like to exchange ideas on in terms of upskilling, you know, whether it's, you know, QA testing or development or AV skills or whatever it might be. You know, happy to talk certainly with regional heads and heads of L&D about how we might work with your teams to do that. We're happy to travel. Again, regionally would be ideal for us, so we can't manage to do all 43 unfortunately, but regionally is definitely attainable for us, so do let us know. Co-production opportunities, we're talking to Merseyside this week about potential in this area, something we haven't really done as yet, but I think as we establish relationships, those opportunities hopefully will come to the fore, where you've got expertise and certain skill sets locally where we can work with you to actually co-produce you know, national products, which for me is you know, it's a bit of a no-brainer really, you know, getting the most out of the skills we've got as a wider group. And then clearly developing and sharing relationships. You know, we're fairly well connected now in terms of government and industry and academia, and also potentially internationally what we can do together in terms of promoting some of the good work we do in the UK internationally. And I know a lot of forces are doing some international work, and we're certainly expanding that within the college, so happy to discuss that with you. And then finally, input. Again, it's a very wide group, but we'll hopefully be able to manage that and filter your feedback into a modernising learning strategy, which Anne and I are taking forward in the new financial year from April the 1st. It's basically taking on a lot of the feedback you've brought to us already, but really you know, getting abreast of the latest technologies and trying to look to the future to sort of give ourselves a vision of what modernised learning could look like in policing going forward, probably for the next 2 years. I think any more than that gets a little bit tricky, but certainly keeping an eye on the future, but with a view to addressing that and reviewing it on an annual basis. So that's it in a nutshell, David, and back to you.
Thanks, and we'll go to questions in a moment, but first of all I'm going to pop a question in whilst and we'll pop the contact details for yourself and Anne on screen whilst I ask this one. But in PDS we're definitely seeing a significant change in when we're helping to support a community of people across different forces. Perhaps over the last couple of years in particular, we've seen them become more open to collaborate with others, and it goes to one of the points you made on that last slide. Are you seeing a similar approach in the college, where traditionally we were quite bordered and siloed? Are we now ready to perhaps co-produce and co-share our problems in the L&D community as much as we are in the tech communities?
Yeah, I mean, Anne, are you okay if I take that? Yeah, no, I think we are, and for me, bizarrely, although COVID and the pandemic was such an awful experience, and it did isolate us in some ways, I think the technology also brought us together in others. You know, it cut down on the travelling, it made it easier to communicate, but equally I think, you know, as the event showed, there's a real appetite for people to engage and share and learn, which I haven't seen before, to be honest. And I do think another massive contributor to that is 365 and that connectivity. You know, technology again enabling that connectivity, but you know, I don't want to lose that face-to-face element, far from it, but I do think there's a lot more opportunity than there ever has been. I think once we get to co-production, I think we know we've really cracked it. I think you know, it's a case of, at the moment, we need to build those relationships and understand where the skill sets lie, but you know, I absolutely think it's attainable, certainly within the next year or so. Absolutely.
And I think I've got a video clip from, we actually were joined by the learning lead for Microsoft for public sector. So I'll play a quick video clip in a second about that. But I think one of the challenges traditionally has been we haven't shared the technology. Well, the beauty is now we do actually share the same technology platform. So those excuses of why we can't work together and why we shouldn't work together are gone now, aren't they? Let's pop this clip in and let's show what we heard from Paul from Microsoft on this as well. I'll just play that in now.
You work for Microsoft in helping to promote L&D across the gov sector. You've been with us for the day at the Modernising Learning and Development in Policing. What were your impressions?
So I think the first thing that, well, actually the thing that was really evident was the energy in the room. and it was great to see so many people talking and sharing and actually coming at this with almost that shared goal of learning and wanting to get better and understanding how you can drive that change across the respective organisations. So I think it was the energy as soon as I walked through the door was the thing that I think will really stuck out for me.
And you work across so many sectors. Does policing really have a unique challenge, or are many of our challenges repeated in other sectors?
So every sector has its nuances, of course they do, and policing, you are saving lives, you are protecting the public, so that is almost taking elements of this to a different level. Having said that, the DNA of what you are doing as an organization is very, very similar to many other organizations in terms of actually how can you bring people together to collaborate, how can you access the data that you've got stored, in a way that makes your workforce more productive. How can you focus on the work or enable people to focus on the work that makes them uniquely human, and actually how can you then start thinking about automation and things like AI to release them from some of the more mundane and repetitive content that is particularly suited to those use cases. And that applies to all customers, regardless of whether you work in policing, another blue light service, or indeed whether you work for the government, whether you work for a bank. Those core challenges remain the same.
And I think that insight of remembering that we can look beyond the policing for the solutions, but there's a lot of fantastic solutions in policing. And what was your biggest takeaway from the event in terms of what you've picked up and what you were looking to do with it moving forward?
Yeah, likewise. I mean, the energy in the room was phenomenal, and I think there's a real desire now to move forward. And I think one of the things that I'm really keen on is trying to build on our practice bank at the college. So we can see a lot of people out there now experimenting with different technologies, trying different things in the learning sphere. So, if we can start to build on our practice bank, capture everything that's going on across policing from point of view of, did it work? Does it look promising? Is it untested? Didn't it work at all? What can we learn from that? But we can also use that as an opportunity to identify some of the things that are going on that we might want to assist with doing some impact evaluation around. And just really starting to build that national picture of what works for learning, in different, when you're trying to sort of learn things very quickly, for example, or do behavioural change or culture, what things are working, with the new technologies in those areas. How can we be sure? What's the impact evaluation? What's the cost of that? And if we can start to really gather that and share that and start to work together on the impact evaluation, that for me would be fantastic. And also, I'd like to dig in a bit more to some of the things David Hayden brought up at the conference around evaluation. So looking at the Thalheimer and Brinkerhoff work, and I'd be really interested if people out there are using some of that already and how we can move some of that forward, and also building into the productivity review. So, if training is going to be considered as an investment proposition, how can we use that learning to make the case that is in fact where we're going with that. So
Absolutely, Anna. I think that was the thing that took an awful lot from it. It's not evaluation is a real process and an important part, and there is so much already out there. And I look at how we do the webinars, how we do events, and the engagement levels we've seen through the Force Collaboration channel. People are really willing to do this, and I'll remind you of the webinars. A couple of weeks ago, we did a webinar on simple automations and lists, and the amount of people who said that's inspired them to go and explore and learn and do things. And I look at the data quite regularly around all this, and in the last year we've had over 17,000 views of our webinars. So this webinar will be joining that very shortly. So there's a real appetite to learn from each other and to share knowledge. So please do subscribe to the YouTube channel, because that's where you will pick up these learnings. And I'm sure we'll come back and revisit the L&D community several times over the next couple of years as we keep progressing on these things. I haven't got any more questions in the chat, so I'm going to go into the usual let's start wrapping up. And there is a reminder that I'm sure the college will be joining us in September down in sunny Brighton, as it was last year. I'm getting a big thumbs up from Mark. We are now taking pre-registration for the summit for delegates. So if you are interested in coming along to the biggest technology, well, no, it's a more digital event than technology. It's really focused on how technology, digital and data is supporting the delivery of frontline policing, and we'll definitely be looking at how we can get more and more about L&D into that community. So scan the QR code, pre-register now, and then as soon as we've got delegate registration details on there, if you are from the commercial side of policing and you're not actually from policing, the sponsorship packages are also open now, so you can actually get along and start doing that. And of course, the business engagement team are there to support you in forces. So if you want to know more about how you can get involved and you perhaps don't know the best way into the college, use the business engagement team. Or if you've got something to share, I was on a fantastic call with a colleague yesterday who was talking about how they've managed to link their L&D management system to SharePoint and managed to get them to talk to each other, which was one of the things that came out of the event, was a real desire to do. Yeah, he's gone off and done it. And so we'll be sharing that very soon as well. And of course, get in touch with us at any time. We've got a lot of events coming up. We always do. They're all on the PDS website. We're going to make them as visible as possible so you can access them and get to know what's going on and play your part. So I really want to thank Mark and Anne and Mike for contributing today. It was a really successful event. We do want to get your feedback. Came back again as a common theme. We do need to be able to evidence these are valuable to you. So if you've got any feedback to give on that, or you want to reach out to Mike or to the team, please get in touch with us on the contact us form, and we'll do more. But thanks again for joining us today. Really great to see such a large audience. Thanks for your questions and comments that have come in, and we hope to see you at our next webinar in a week's time. Thanks a lot.